What is the douchiest worst thing you've ever seen someone do to their significant other in public? I was sitting in the car with my mom and dad, and my dad was having one of his rages while at the wheel and stopped at an intersection. After yelling and swearing and calling my mom every demeaning name in the book to the point where she had tears streaming down her face, he tries to force her out of the car, but she protests desperately and doesn't budge. So he says, "Frick you then, I'm walking home." He pulls the keys out of the ignition, gets out of the car, slams the door behind him and starts walking the 40km to our house, leaving myself and my sobbing mom in the middle of a busy intersection with no keys to start the car and every nearby vehicle honking the horn and swearing at us. Unfortunately, my dad was often a dong to my mother. Whenever she spoke, he would put her down. If she wanted to go out, she had to call him and ask for permission. Once, when I was about 4, we went to a party. The room was very warm and my mother looked flushed, with red cheeks. He thought she was wearing makeup, which she wasn't allowed to, and in front of all the guests, told her to wipe that freaking crap from her face. He dragged her to the bathroom and scrubbed her face. He kept pointing to the completely white rag and insisting it was pink from the crud on her face. Those were bad memories. PMs telling me to diet and kill myself for being so fat. PMs asking me for sex. Please send me screenshots of these PMs and I'll work on dealing with these posters. I've been at a wedding all afternoon. I'll sort through them now. Thank you so much. My sister-in-law has a bad habit of starting arguments with her husband in public settings. It's always over the pettiest crap too. He usually nods silently because any other reaction just adds fuel to the flames. When he used to defend himself, other family members would accuse him of having a bad temper. I don't see him as a man with a bad temper. I see him as one of the most patient men in the world whose limits are tested on a daily basis. Man, just writing this is pee me off. I won tickets to a water park through a radio show recently, and we went with 4 other couples, as well as the DJs. The show had hired a limo for the day, which naturally was stocked with alcohol. We hadn't even gotten onto the highway before the alcohol was opened. Halfway there, it was about 1.5 hours to get there. The guy next to my wife was completely drunk and was talking to us about how he and his girlfriend liked to watch pee and try the things they saw. His girlfriend, who was right next to him, was looking at us horrified, shaking her head, and going, "Who were you with? That's not us." He just kept talking and ignored her. I was at a LAN party that my friend was hosting and there was about 10 of us there. One of our friends brought his girlfriend, but wouldn't let her play with us. We kept feeling awful, so I just ended up giving her my controller and letting her play. He goes crazy, smacks the controller out of her hand, and tells her to stop bothering us. She tears up and tries to leave, but he talks her into staying. I have no idea why he wants her there to just sit around and do nothing. He later on tries to pull down her top and fill her up in front of all of us. I ended up driving her home and she broke up with him. We didn't talk to him for like 4 months after that. I have no idea why he wants her there to just sit around and do nothing. To show her off like a trophy. That is insecure dickhead psychology 101. I saw the guy beat his wife with a belt in the parking lot of Ross. She was punching back, and the whole thing was really bizarre to me. They were just testing that belt to see if it was actually worth the $3. A few years ago, I was at a house party. There was about 30 people outside, some carelessly drinking while standing in the middle of the street. A loud argument between a couple caught my attention and I looked in their direction just in time to witness the guy break a beer bottle over the girl's shoulder. Everyone went silent. The guy, looking around nervously, took it upon himself to opine, "What's the problem, B? We break bottles on each other all the time." I didn't know whether to laugh or get involved. Moments later, a few tap-out clad bros took it upon themselves to chase off the guy with threats of severe beating. To make the whole ordeal worse, I went back outside later to have a smoke and there was the girl, still soaked in beer, making out with the dude. I left in disgust. Maybe that really was their thing. I have a friend who has a girlfriend, now fiance, frick me, who would publicly badger him about how he wasn't good enough. I had a pretty decent job and he was still at uni. She sat at dinner one time and told him how he should be like me. She would tell his friends that he didn't have sex with her enough. She would mock him in every way that is emasculating to a man. It was awful. The kicker is, this guy is probably the most genuine and kind-hearted person I know. You must do something before it's too late. What you have to do, I do not know, but something. My brother flipped out on his girlfriend when they were bowling together. She was joking at him throw a gutter ball and he did. And he got insanely pissed, started yelling at her, made a scene and stormed out. He has some issues. Yeah. Bowling is serious business. My boyfriend and I browsing Goodwill the other day when he saw a sunglass wearing young dad looking at a kid's game. His kid wanted to see what it was, and instead of obliging, the dad screams at him, "I'm looking at IT," and the kid starts crying. The mom comes up to see what's going on, and dad immediately starts consoling the kid by saying, "AWW, what did mommy do? What did she do to you? Freaking dong." I didn't realize sunglass wearing had somehow recently become a negative adjective. Two teenagers were getting off the bus with their 3-year-old daughter. The guy kept calling the girl a fricked up bee and kept raising his hands at her like he was going to slap her while she was holding the little girl. She kept begging him to visit his daughter, and he kept shaking his head and walked away. "That ain't my baby." The mother, still holding the little girl, followed him and he nearly pushed them both into traffic. They were arguing on the curb, but the mother caught her balance. He crossed the street, she followed and he tried to push her into traffic again. Plot twist, that was the first time he'd even met that woman. Twice in 3 weeks I've had to call the cops due to guys beating on their girlfriends outside the bar where I work. Both cases the couples were very young, 2022-ish, and it was obviously not the first time it had happened. Makes me so depressed to hear the repeated "but he really is a nice guy" while the police interrogates the dude. Sigh. Not quite something that I saw, but rather saw a result of. I study eskrima at a local martial arts studio, which also teaches taekwondo. During one of the kids' TKD classes, the lead instructor took out some of those pads that look sort of like castanets. Someone else probably knows what they're called. The reason they look like that is because when you hit one side, it collides with the other to make a loud smacking sound. Anyway, the instructor was talking to the class and hit the bag, and noticed one of the little girls screamed, covered her ear and started crying. Now, imagine the death glare of a man with 6 black belts, 2 of which are 7th degrees. This is the look the instructor gave this girl's apparently abusive parents. They never came back to the school. I used to be that kid. Maybe she'll set them on fire one day. My step-uncle was driving down a back road in Nebraska once and he saw a guy beating his wife, girlfriend, sister, whatever. He called the cops, and a few weeks later he was called into court as a witness. You have to picture a really tall, really lanky guy for this to be as funny. But on the witness stand when asked to give his account he said, "I was driven. Then all I saw was her," and fists, and started to punch the air in front of him. The next time someone asks my account for anything, I'm going to tell them the story and end it with, "and fists," and start punching the air. It is going to be glorious. Had a friend housemate whose girlfriend treated him like crap. He tried to break it off a few times, she wouldn't let him. I was never clear on how that worked, but it probably involved their close families and mutual friends. I was neither. We were at a party at his house, and things were going well. She was being chatty and flirty with other guys as she often did, but he was just having a good time, talking to lots of people. At some point, they disappear from the party, and you start hearing shouting from his room. We don't know whether to intervene or not, but they're both just shouting through a semi-closed door, so we kind of let them go. Basically, he's calling her out on her crap. She's going for petty insults. Then she sees there are people outside the door, and immediately bursts into tears. Now he's a dude yelling at a crying woman. He realizes what's going on, smashes something of his against the wall. All attention is now on that situation. Ladies take the girl away downstairs. I try to talk my friend down. When I come downstairs, she's spreading a sob story, alluding that he might have hit her, etc. Basically trying to make him look like a monster for finally standing up to her. I realize this doesn't seem like much, but it came at the head of years of this crap and I couldn't believe how a person could do that to someone they cared about. Two of us, one lady and myself, took her and her friend flatmate outside and I hailed a cab. We put them in it. I give the cabbie a 20 and told him to take them home. She smiles and thanks me for being so caring. I leaned in through the open window and whispered that she is dead to me and if she ever set foot in my house again, I'm calling the cops. The shocked, oh face she made as the cabbie drove off wasn't satisfying at the time, but now that they've been broken up for years, it's a very fond memory. Epilogue. My friend and I skipped out on the rest of party and the accusing glances and went for a long walk. I was on holiday in India a few years back and one night we went out clubbing in Goa. A big beefy dude starting beating up his girlfriend on the dance floor, dragging her around by her hair, crap like that. A big crowd gathered but no one tried to stop him. Two of my mates stepped in to help. One was about half his size, the other did a bit of martial arts. Between the two they managed to separate him from his GF and knock him the frick out. She told us she wanted to leave and head back home in another city, so we wound up taking her back to her hotel so she could grab her things. We tried to be quick but the room was a mess and took a while to get sorted. Meanwhile, he rocked up with a bunch of his mates to stop us. By this point there were about 4 of us, so we managed to delay them and get away with minimal damage. We put her in a taxi and got her a train ticket back to her hometown. She managed to get home safely and called up my mates a few times after that, calling them her guardian angels and asking to meet up, but by then we'd already left for another town and that was that. You guys are amazing. I wish everyone was as brave and kind to strangers as you and your friends are. I was at a country music festival with my younger sister. This guy behind us appeared to be really drunk and was calling his very petite girlfriend a piece of crap, ugly boss B, every name you could think of. She just kept saying, okay, whatever, trying to get him to just chill out. I looked back several times and gave him the look and it clearly wasn't working. Things escalated after about 30 minutes and I look back and he's pulling his arm back like he's going to hit her. I turn around and really loudly said, hey, cool it. He called me a B and told me to mind my own freaking business. At this point, every male within 50 feet was quickly walking over to make sure I didn't get the crap beaten out of me. He left and I offered his girlfriend my phone to call someone to come pick her up. Probably not the smartest decision I've ever made in regards to my own safety, but you better believe I wasn't going to watch this huge redneck beat the crap out of his tiny girlfriend. All it takes is one person to step up and say something to a sucker like that. You will quickly see that a lot of people around you who were afraid to make that first move will join in once that initial confrontation has been made. Seen a dude hit a girl at a party once. Never seen so many large dudes come out of nowhere to wreck someone's crap. I was still processing the fact that he hit a girl while he was getting pummeled by 10 plus dudes. While sitting on a food court at the mall, I saw a guy and his girlfriend sitting with 2 other girls. I plainly heard the guy state, yeah, I'm gonna be getting some of this later. He then grabbed the back of her head and shoved it in between his legs. She looked absolutely devastated and embarrassed. I felt horrible for her. Why would someone disrespect someone so much? Right away I knew he would be a complete tool. Well, that's a little judgmental. Maybe he was in full Ed Hardy gear. Ah, okay, gotcha. At a party in college when this girl comes to screeching halt out front, she jumps out and runs up to her boyfriend. She's clearly upset and on the verge of tears. She tells her boyfriend that she left the gate open and his dog escaped from the yard. Boyfriend goes berserk. He starts unleashing a verbal barrage that's creativity was only matched by its brutality. One memorable quote, "UCM guzzling W. Anything that happens to that dog will be paid back to you 10 times. Apparently the dog was found waiting in the yard for them when they got home. The little guy probably just wanted to go exploring for a bit. I once overheard a woman say to her husband, "That's fine, but just remember you will always be the B in this relationship." My girlfriend would say something like this, in jest of course, but she would sound dead serious. I still think about this sometimes and feel horrible with myself for not saying anything. I was in line to check in for a flight and there was a couple behind me with a child in a stroller who couldn't be much more than about a year old. The child's skin was tinted yellow, obviously jaundice. Another person in line made a comment about how well behaved the child was. The line was taking a really long time. The mom said that they were flying to some hospital to do an organ transplant. A few minutes later, I overheard the couple talking quietly amongst themselves, and the man started speaking to her in pretty harsh tones. Something about how she always talks too freaking much, and by the way she forgot to pack something they needed, and she was so freaking stupid. I caught a glimpse of her face as I glanced behind me, and it was painfully obvious that she was completely miserable in that relationship, but was toughing it out for her sick kid. Having a sick child puts such a strain on relationships. I'm not condoning the behavior, but it is possible that it wasn't always that way. I was visiting family up in Ohio when I walked out of a store and saw an arguing couple on the walkway. At this point she was crying and he was calling her every degrading name in the book. My blood was already boiling because anybody who has the audacity to do that in public is most likely worse in private. But it was just one of those things you had to walk away from. That's when he hit her. I heard a loud slap as he told her to shut the frick up and stop crying. After that my sight went red. I'm sorry, but at no point is it okay to hit somebody who is not a threat to you or to those with the inability to defend themselves, especially if it is somebody significantly smaller than you. Without hesitation I dropped my stuff, beeline to them, and the second our eyes met I decked him in the face. He lost his balance for a second and I took that opportunity to grab him by his clothes and throw him over the railing behind us. He flipped over it and hit the ground hard and he just started sounding pathetic after that. The girl freaked out but didn't fight me or yell at me or do anything to defend him, so I can be thankful for that. Hopefully that was enough of a realization for her. After the initial rush, I told him something along the lines of never touching a girl again. That, unfortunately, was when I met his older brother. I guess he was in a car or something, but at this point I was walking away and he intercepted me. This guy had an easy 60-80 pounds on me and he used it well, pushing me off my feet with one shove. I got back up and I started doing what I could, but eventually he nailed me in the neck and I almost blacked out, opening my eyes to see him sitting on top of me with my arms pinned to my sides. I wasn't very pretty by the end of it, but the cops were called at some point so he eventually got off and bolted. Good times. TL. DR. Guy hit girl. I hit guy. Guy's older brother demolished me. Props to you though for stepping in. I wasn't here, but this happened to one of my roommates. She just joined a sorority this past semester of school and was taking her on again off again BF to the spring formal. It was her birthday weekend and she was really excited to have a nice and fun event to go to with him as they had been having problems prior to this and were just getting back to normal. She has an incredibly fit and athletic body and was wearing a really tight fitting dress, so other guys at the formal were checking her out. Her BF saw this and snapped on her for it within 10 minutes of being there. He started yelling at her in front of all of her new sisters and friends for being a riss and about how he can't trust her, even though she did nothing to facilitate the being looked at wrong. He brought up all of her close guy friends whom she hung out with, but didn't actually do anything with, when they were broken up. Not to mention, the last time they broke up, he didn't actually tell her. She found out when she went over to see him, and his roommates told her he was at a party trying to get with some random girls. She left that formal sobbing within the first half hour of being there, and her craphead BF stayed all night to partake in the free sorority booze with his buddies. She took him back 3 days later. That girl needs to visit the Wizard of Oz and get some self-esteem. I worked security at a bar, and as I was rounding a corner, I saw a guy throw his petite girlfriend, as hard as he could, into a wall. Then she fell to the floor with the wind knocked out of her, after being stunned for a second. I grabbed the guy, and as violently as I could, I pulled him out of the bar, making sure to knock him into every object I could on the way. One of my off-duty bosses, who only saw me removing the guy, but not the initial incident, reprimanded me for it. I was usually easy on people and I would only get physical as a last resort, but this guy had it coming. I first became aware a friend of mine was an abusive knob when my wife and I were having dinner with his wife. I knew this guy since he was 18. He was fun, smart, and had a great sense of humor. When he got married in his 20s, he and his bride seemed like a happy couple until we started hanging around them more. His wife was always quiet with a small smile, and so we tried to include her in our circle because we wanted to get to know her better and so she wouldn't feel like an outsider. One night, we were out at a themed bar and they were serving drinks that were kind of exotic. His wife, who was normally very quiet, ordered one that had a glow stick in it which made him raise an eyebrow, but he said, "I'll allow it." At some point, we're laughing and having a good time when she starts playing with the umbrella in her drink like it's a real parasol over her head, and then put it in her hair. My friend started to change mood drastically. Then she did the unthinkable and took the glow stick and put it between her breasts just to be silly. She wasn't being flirtatious or lewd, and the table atmosphere had been casual and silly. But my friend then crossed his arms, very slowly and purposefully, and glared at her. He stared her down but said nothing. She did the usual, "What thing?" But quickly, she started to break down. She got quiet, took the glow stick out, and then placed it on the table and stared at the table blankly. He kept glaring at her, and the longer he did it, the more shy and withdrawn she looked until she started to tremble and tried not to cry. Then he stopped, and calmly looked at us, and pretended like nothing had happened with us so anyway, kind of attitude like his wife had completely embarrassed him and he put an end to that right away. She never spoke a word the rest of the night, and he ignored her. My wife and I were shocked, and didn't know what to do. It was the first hint we had that he was very controlling and abusive, and as the months went on, it became rather obvious she was miserable and scared. Thankfully, that poor girl eventually left him, and the ex-husband is no longer our friend. I have no idea if this story is true or not, but my friend claimed he once witnessed a girl bend down and tie her sole shoe. They were walking in front of him when suddenly the sew stopped and extended his foot out towards the girl. The girl set down her bag, bent down, and tied his shoe while he tapped away on his phone. People are weird. They could be into BDSM and just doing the master-servant thing. She may just enjoy doing things like that for him. I used to date a guy that would have these horrible anxiety attacks. Seriously, one of the nicest guys ever, but when he got wound up he would bark orders of what he needed. It was really harmless and truly never aimed at me, but you tend to get a lot of people staring at you when the guy you are with is gripping your forearm in a Best Buy and shouting, "I need to leave here now. I don't care if you come, but I am leaving now." You are sitting at a table and he is gruffly saying, "Can you get me some water? I need some water now." People would always glare at him and think I was this weak woman staying with an abusive man, but honestly his urgency was understandable once you watched him have a full attack. He would pass out or throw up and would finish his attacks sobbing, which can really be humiliating in front of a large crowd of people. The harsh tone was entirely accidental and he would usually grab my arm because he was dizzy and said I helped ground him. I only got a small bruise once from him grabbing me, but he proceeded to pass out and fall very hard and kind of yank me down with him, and afterwards he felt horribly guilty. The guy was great, but his panic attacks were stressful for me as well, and we wound up breaking up, but I always felt bad that he got grouped into the horrible douche category like the rest of these guys. As a fellow anxiety attack sufferer, I can attest that I sometimes feel like yelling similar stuff but have never acted on this impulse. I've been lucky enough to be able to escape to a bathroom or an alley for long enough to calm down. They suck so much. Good on you for being understanding about it. That must have been so tough. BTW, my comma key is broken. Grammar Nazis. Please forgive. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.